largest island on Earth holds a secret most maps refuse to tell. Greenland appears on every globe, yet what actually exists beneath that frozen shell remains one of geography's most distorted mysteries. This isn't just ice, it's a 2.8 million year old archive written in frozen water. Greenland sits where the Arctic Ocean meets the North Atlantic, a colossal fragment of stone and ice stretching 2,670 kilometers from north to south. Its ice sheet alone weighs enough to depress the bedrock beneath by over 300 meters. Remove that ice, and the land would slowly rebound over thousands of years, like a mattress after a sleeper rises. But here's what the textbooks skip: 80% of Greenland's surface is buried under ice that averages 1.6 kilometers thick. In some places, that frozen blanket reaches depths of 3.2 kilometers. Stand on top, and you're standing on ice that fell as snow when mammoths still walked the earth. Before this journey begins, I want to try something special. I want to see how far these videos are going and how far you are watching from. Welcome to the channel where we explore the world through real stories, hidden places, and unforgettable travel experiences. If you enjoy travel documentary videos like this, please like the video and subscribe. It truly helps this journey reach more corners of the world. Now tell me in the comments, which country are you watching from? Let's see how far this video can travel. All right, let's begin. The island's name is history's cruelest marketing trick. When Norse explorer Eric the Red arrived in 982 AD, he needed settlers. So he called this frozen wasteland Greenland, hoping the name would lure farmers from Iceland. It worked. Colonists came expecting fertile ground. What they found was an icy trap that would eventually consume their entire civilization. The Norse settlements vanished by the 15th century, leaving only ruins and questions. Climate shift, resource depletion, or conflict with the Inuit, scholars still argue. But the ice remembers everything. The Inuit arrived much earlier, around 2500 BC, migrating across the frozen Bering Strait in waves. They didn't fight the cold, they adapted. Survival here demands intimate knowledge of ice behavior, seal migration patterns, and the brutal mathematics of calorie expenditure in sub-zero darkness. Traditional Inuit culture developed technologies we still use today. The kayak, designed for silent seal hunting in icy waters; snow goggles carved from caribou antlers with narrow slits to prevent snow blindness; layered clothing systems that create dead air spaces for insulation. Every innovation was born from necessity, in a land that kills the unprepared. Today, roughly 56,000 people call Greenland home. Most live along the ice-free western coast, where the ocean current brings slightly warmer water. Nuuk, the capital, sits at 64 degrees north latitude, yet its harbor rarely freezes completely thanks to the West Greenland current. The city feels like a Scandinavian town dropped into the Arctic. Colorful wooden houses climbing steep hillsides, fishing boats bobbing in the harbor. But step outside the settlements and civilization vanishes. The interior belongs entirely to ice. Flying over Greenland reveals a landscape that shouldn't exist on Earth. From above, the ice sheet looks like a vast white ocean, frozen mid-wave. Crevasses split the surface in geometric patterns, creating blue wounds that drop into absolute darkness. These aren't simple cracks. They're constantly shifting mazes where ice moves, grinds, and occasionally swallows entire research stations. Scientists drilling ice cores have pulled up cylinders containing air bubbles from 800,000 years ago, ancient atmosphere perfectly preserved. By analyzing these bubbles, we can reconstruct past climates with startling precision. The coast tells a different story entirely. Where ice meets ocean, the collision produces icebergs of impossible scale. Ilulissat Ice Fjord on the west coast births some of the northern hemisphere's largest icebergs. The Surmek-Kujalik Glacier here moves 40 meters per day, calving ice chunks the size of Manhattan. When these titans break free, the sound echoes for kilometers. Local hunters describe it as the island breathing, exhaling fragments of its frozen body into the sea. These icebergs drift south, entering shipping lanes where they become navigation hazards. The iceberg that sank the Titanic in 1912 likely began its journey in Greenland, but Greenland's geology extends far beyond ice. The exposed bedrock along the coast reveals some of Earth's oldest stones. Isua in southwest Greenland contains rocks dated to 3.8 billion years old, formed when our planet was still cooling from its violent birth. These ancient formations contain stromatolites, fossilized bacterial mats that represent some of the earliest evidence of life on Earth. Standing before these rocks is standing before the dawn of biology itself. The island's mineral wealth has attracted attention for decades. Greenland holds significant deposits of rare earth elements, crucial for modern electronics and green energy technology. Zinc, lead, gold, and potentially massive oil reserves beneath the seafloor. Denmark, which maintains sovereignty over Greenland as part of the Kingdom of Denmark, has long managed these resources. But Greenland's government has pushed for greater autonomy, viewing resource extraction as a path to economic independence. The geopolitics here grow more complex annually. In 2019, news broke that the United States had inquired about purchasing Greenland. The proposal was rejected immediately, but it highlighted the island's strategic importance. Military bases, shipping routes, resource claims, and climate research all converge here. Climate change has transformed Greenland into ground zero for planetary observation. The ice sheet is melting at accelerating rates. Between 2002 and 2020, Greenland lost approximately 4.7 trillion tons of ice. That meltwater flows into the ocean, contributing to global sea level rise. If the entire ice sheet melted, a process that would take centuries, global sea levels would rise by approximately 7.4 meters. Coastal cities worldwide would vanish. The implications are existential. Scientists have established research stations across the ice sheet to monitor this transformation. Summit Station sits at the highest point of the ice sheet, 3,200 meters above sea level. Temperatures here can drop below minus 60 degrees Celsius. Researchers endure these conditions to drill ice cores, measure accumulation rates, and track atmospheric changes. The data they collect feeds climate models that predict our collective future. Every measurement matters. Every core sample contains information we cannot obtain anywhere else on Earth. The ice itself is not static. It flows like an incredibly slow river, moving from the interior toward the coasts under its own massive weight. This movement creates pressure that can turn ice blue through a process of compression and light refraction. The deepest, oldest ice glows an otherworldly azure, a color that seems stolen from a different spectrum entirely. Glaciologists spend careers studying this flow, mapping the hidden topography beneath the ice, tracking melt patterns, and trying to predict how quickly this frozen giant will surrender to rising temperatures. Wildlife here exists in defiance of logic. Polar bears patrol the northern coasts, hunting ringed seals on sea ice. Musk oxen, prehistoric survivors with thick coats and curved horns, graze on sparse tundra vegetation during the brief summer. Arctic foxes change color with the seasons, white in winter, brown in summer, perpetually hunting lemmings across the barren landscape. Seabirds nest on cliff faces in colonies numbering millions, their constant cries echoing across fjords. In the waters, narwhals, the unicorns of the sea, swim. Beneath ice floes, their spiral tusks breaking the surface. Humpback whales migrate here each summer to feed in nutrient-rich waters. Life finds a way, even here, even in conditions that seem designed to prevent it. The midnight sun and polar night define existence here more than any calendar. North of the Arctic Circle, the sun doesn't set for weeks during summer. Continuous daylight, no darkness. The psychological impact is profound. Sleep patterns disrupt. Time loses meaning. Conversely, winter brings polar night, weeks without sunrise. Darkness becomes absolute. Depression rates spike. Vitamin D supplements become survival tools. The human body wasn't designed for these extremes, yet people endure, adapt, and even thrive. Greenland's towns cling to the coast like barnacles, connected not by roads but by sea and air. No highway system exists. Travel between settlements requires boats in summer, helicopters year-round, or dog sleds in winter. This isolation creates tight-knit communities where everyone knows everyone. But it also means limited access to services, goods, and opportunities. Modern communication technology, has helped bridge this gap. Internet access, satellite phones, and video calls connect Greenland to the outside world in ways previous generations couldn't imagine. Yet something essential persists here that the connected world has lost: a relationship with land and ice that goes beyond utility. The Inuit language contains dozens of words for different types of snow and ice because these distinctions mean survival. Siku means general sea ice. Nilak is freshwater ice. Manarak is smooth ice. Each term carries information about safety, hunting conditions, and travel routes. This isn't poetic. It's practical knowledge encoded in language, passed down through generations who understood that the ice is never just ice. Mining operations carve into Greenland's bedrock, extracting zinc, lead, and rare earth elements. These minerals lie beneath ice and permafrost, requiring specialized equipment and workers willing to endure isolation measured in months. The global demand for resources has turned attention toward Greenland's untapped wealth. Geologists estimate vast deposits of oil, natural gas, and minerals worth trillions, but extraction here isn't simple economics. Every mine must contend with ice that shifts, temperatures that freeze machinery, and supply chains that span oceans. Environmental concerns add another layer. Greenland's ecosystem is fragile. A single oil spill could devastate fishing grounds that feed entire communities. Mining waste could contaminate fjords that have remained pristine for millennia. The tension between economic development and environmental protection plays out in parliament debates, town hall meetings, and international negotiations. Denmark still maintains sovereignty over Greenland's foreign affairs and defense. Though home rule has expanded significantly since 1979, this relationship grows. More complex as Greenland's strategic importance increases, melting ice opens new shipping routes through the Northwest Passage, cutting travel time between Europe and Asia by thousands of kilometers. Military installations dot the landscape, remnants of Cold War positioning that have gained renewed relevance. Thule Air Base, operated by the United States, monitors space and tracks ballistic missiles from the northern frontier. China has expressed interest in mining projects and infrastructure development. Russia expands its Arctic military presence. Greenland sits at the center of a new great game, where ice melt creates opportunities and tensions that previous generations never anticipated. Climate change transforms Greenland faster than almost anywhere on Earth. The ice sheet loses approximately 280 billion tons of ice annually, a number so large it defies comprehension. This melt contributes measurably to global sea level rise. Coastal cities thousands of kilometers away will flood partially because of what happens here. Yet for Greenlanders, climate change isn't an abstract future threat. It's Tuesday. Hunters notice sea ice forming later each year, shortening the season for traditional seal hunting. Fishermen find new species in waters that were previously too cold. Farmers experiment with crops that couldn't survive here a generation ago. Potatoes now grow in southern Greenland. Sheep farming expands northward. The landscape itself shifts as permafrost thaws, destabilizing buildings and infrastructure. Roads crack, foundations sink. Engineers design new construction methods for ground that no longer stays frozen year round. What worked for centuries no longer applies. Adaptation becomes continuous. The ice sheet's interior remains largely unexplored. Satellite imagery reveals surface features, but what lies beneath stays hidden under kilometers of compression. Ground penetrating radar has mapped some of the bedrock topography, discovering massive canyons and mountain ranges buried under ice. These hidden landscapes existed before the ice came, and they'll exist after it's gone. How quickly that transition happens depends on variables we're still measuring. Scientists debate tipping points, feedback loops, and irreversible thresholds. The ice reflects sunlight, keeping the Arctic cool. As it melts, darker ocean and land absorb more heat, accelerating melt in a self-reinforcing cycle. Fresh meltwater entering the ocean disrupts currents that regulate global climate. The Gulf Stream, which keeps Europe temperate, could weaken or shift. What happens in Greenland doesn't stay in Greenland. Tourism has become Greenland's fastest growing industry. Visitors arrive seeking pristine wilderness, dramatic landscapes, and the chance to witness a world before it transforms irrevocably. They cruise past icebergs, hike across tundra, and photograph the northern lights dancing across winter skies. This influx brings revenue that isolated communities desperately need, but it also brings challenges. Infrastructure built for small populations strains under tourist numbers. Cultural sites face wear from foot traffic. The very remoteness that attracts visitors becomes threatened by their presence. Some communities embrace tourism, training guides, building lodges, and creating experiences that share Inuit culture with outsiders. Others resist, viewing tourists as intrusions into a way of life that has survived precisely because it remained isolated. The debate mirrors larger questions about Greenland's future. Does modernization mean abandoning tradition? Can economic development and cultural preservation coexist? These aren't theoretical questions debated in universities. They're practical realities negotiated in fishing villages, mining towns, and the capital city of Nuuk. Education presents another challenge. Small communities struggle to maintain schools when populations decline. Young people leave for opportunities. And elsewhere, creating a demographic crisis where the average age creeps upward, those who remain often face limited career options. Fishing, hunting, and government jobs dominate the economy. Entrepreneurship exists, but requires navigating bureaucratic systems designed for larger, more connected places. Internet access has opened new possibilities. Remote work allows some Greenlanders to hold jobs based in Copenhagen, Reykjavik, or further abroad, while remaining in their home communities. Online education provides access to courses and degrees previously available only to those who could afford to leave. Technology bridges some gaps, though bandwidth limitations and high costs create barriers. The digital divide isn't just between Greenland and the outside world, but between Greenland's towns and settlements. Mental health challenges persist across Arctic communities. The combination of isolation, harsh climate, long dark winters, and rapid cultural change creates conditions where depression, substance abuse, and suicide rates exceed global averages. Greenland has one of the world's highest suicide rates, a crisis that communities acknowledge but struggle to address with limited mental health resources. Traditional coping mechanisms that worked for generations face stress from modern pressures. The extended family networks that provided supports weaken as people move to towns for education and employment. The connection to land and traditional activities that gave life meaning and purpose becomes harder to maintain when survival no longer depends on hunting and fishing skills. Some communities revive traditional practices deliberately, teaching young people skills that had begun to fade. Dog sledding, kayaking in traditional skin boats, drum dancing, and throat singing get passed to new generations. These aren't museum pieces or tourist performances, they're living traditions that connect present to past, providing identity and continuity in a world that often seems to value only the new. Language preservation efforts intensify as Kalaallisut, the dominant Greenlandic language, faces pressure from Danish and English. Schools teach in Greenlandic, but many young people switch to Danish for higher education and professional life. Each generation becomes slightly more distant from the language that encoded centuries of environmental knowledge and cultural wisdom. Yet Greenlandic persists, evolving, incorporating new words for new concepts while maintaining its essential structure and worldview. The ice tells stories if you know how to read it. Glaciologists drill cores that capture atmospheric conditions from thousands of years ago. Tiny air bubbles trapped in ice preserve ancient atmosphere, allowing scientists to measure carbon dioxide levels from before human civilization existed. Volcanic eruptions leave ash layers, forest fires deposit soot. Even human pollution appears in recent ice, marking the exact years when industrial activity accelerated. These cores are time machines, physical records of Earth's climate written in frozen water. The Greenland ice sheet moves like a living thing, though its pace defies human perception. Glaciers flow downhill under their own weight, grinding bedrock beneath, carving valleys that won't be revealed until the ice retreats. This movement creates pressure. Ice at the bottom of the sheet can reach temperatures where it begins to melt, despite sub-freezing air temperatures at the surface. Meltwater lubricates the base, allowing faster flow. Faster flow means more ice reaches the ocean, where it breaks off as icebergs, contributing to sea level rise. The process accelerates in ways that climate models struggle to predict. Ilulissat Isfjord produces more icebergs than any other glacier outside Antarctica. The Jakobshavn Glacier has retreated kilometers in recent decades, exposing bedrock that hasn't seen sunlight in millennia. Enormous blocks of ice calve from the glacier face with explosive force, creating waves that can swamp boats kilometers away. The sound carries across the fjord, a deep crack followed by rumbling, as thousands of tons of ice collapse into the sea. Locals have witnessed the glacier retreat within their lifetimes, watching the ice edge pull back year after year. Tourism brings both opportunity and challenge. Visitors arrive to witness Arctic landscapes before they change irreversibly. They kayak among icebergs, hike across tundra, photograph northern lights. The income supports communities transitioning away from traditional economies. Hotels appear where fishing shacks once stood. Guides who once hunted now lead expeditions. The shift creates jobs, but also raises questions about authenticity and sustainability. How many tourists can fragile ecosystems support? What happens when the very attractions people come to see disappear because too many people came to see them? Mining interests eye Greenland's mineral wealth with increasing hunger. Rare earth elements essential for modern technology exist in economically viable concentrations. Zinc, lead, gold, and other metals lie beneath the ice and rock. Previous mining operations closed when prices made extraction unprofitable, but rising demand and advancing technology make old prospects viable again. The Greenlandic government weighs economic benefits against environmental costs. Mining provides revenue and employment, but also creates pollution, disrupts landscapes, and requires infrastructure in places that have none. Each proposed mine triggers debates that split communities between those who need jobs and those who fear losing their land. Climate change creates an Arctic paradox. Warming temperatures make resource extraction easier, just as global awareness of climate damage grows. Less ice means more accessible minerals and potential shipping routes. The Northwest Passage, sought by explorers for centuries, becomes navigable for longer periods each year. Ships that once required icebreaker escorts can transit independently. Arctic shipping lanes could reduce voyage times between Europe and Asia by thousands of kilometers compared to routes through the Suez or Panama canals. Greenland sits at the crossroads of these emerging routes, potentially becoming a hub for Arctic shipping, refueling, and emergency services. The geopolitical implications extend beyond shipping and mining. Military strategists recognize Greenland's location between North America and Europe. The island's position offers surveillance capabilities, early warning systems, and control over Arctic access routes. Thule Air Base, operated by the United States since World War II, represents the largest American military installation in the Arctic. Its radar systems track satellites and potential missile launches. The base exists through agreement with Denmark, but Greenland's growing autonomy raises questions about future arrangements. Who controls Greenland matters to powers far beyond its shores. China has expressed interest in Greenlandic mining projects and infrastructure development. The attention concerns both Denmark and NATO allies who worry about strategic resources falling under Chinese influence. Rare earth elements are particularly sensitive. These materials are essential for electronics, renewable energy technology, and military applications. Currently, China dominates global rare earth production, giving it leverage over supply chains. Alternative sources in Greenland could reduce that dependence, but financing large scale mining requires investment that often comes with strings attached. Greenland finds itself courted by powers treating the island as a strategic asset rather than a home to 56,000 people trying to navigate their own future. The 2019 controversy over an American proposal to purchase Greenland revealed how others view the island. The suggestion, quickly dismissed by both Danish and Greenlandic officials, treated Greenland as property to it be bought and sold rather than a self-governing territory with its own aspirations. The incident highlighted competing visions. To some, Greenland represents untapped resources and strategic position. To Greenlanders, it's a homeland where families have lived for generations, where culture and identity matter more than mineral deposits. Independence debates intensify as Greenland develops economically. Full sovereignty remains officially a goal, but practical questions complicate the timeline. Greenland receives substantial subsidies from Denmark, funding roughly half the government budget. Independence would require replacing that income through resource development, taxation, or other means. Could a nation of 56,000 people sustain itself economically? Iceland, with a similar population, manages independence, but circumstances differ. Greenland's geography, climate, and development challenges create obstacles Iceland doesn't face. The democratic process in Greenland operates through a parliament where parties debate these questions openly. Elections turn on economic policy, resource development, environmental protection, and the pace of movement toward independence. Unlike many colonized territories, Greenland's path toward self-determination proceeds through negotiation rather than conflict. Denmark has stated its support for eventual Greenlandic independence, if that's what Greenlanders choose. The relationship remains complex, neither fully colonial nor fully equal, but evolving towards something unprecedented. Education in Greenlandic universities and trade schools prepares young people for an uncertain future. Students study everything from traditional knowledge to renewable energy technology. Some learn to maintain wind turbines that provide power to remote communities. Others study marine biology to understand changing fish populations. The curriculum balances preservation of cultural knowledge with skills needed in a modernizing economy. Teachers face the challenge of preparing students for jobs that might not exist yet while ensuring they don't lose connection to traditions that define their ancestors. Healthcare delivery across Greenland's vast distances requires creative solutions. Many settlements lack resident doctors or nurses. Telemedicine allows patients to consult with specialists in larger towns or Denmark without traveling. Emergency evacuations by helicopter remain necessary for serious conditions, weather permitting. The healthcare system manages challenges that would seem insurmountable elsewhere. A population scattered across 2 million square kilometers with no road connections between most towns creates logistical nightmares that planning can minimize but never eliminate. The settlement of Itakor Tormi on Greenland's remote east coast exemplifies isolation. Roughly 350 people live in one of the world's most isolated communities. The settlement sits at the mouth of Scoresby Sund, the world's largest fjord system. Pack ice blocks access much of the year. Supplies arrive by ship during brief summer months or by helicopter year round, weather permitting. Residents hunt polar bears, seals, and narwhals using methods passed through generations. The town maintains a school, health clinic, and small hotel for the few tourists who make the difficult journey. Life here operates at a pace dictated by seasons, weather, and ice conditions rather than clocks and calendars. Polar bears roam the sea ice, hunting seals at breathing holes. These apex predators face uncertain futures as sea ice declines. Bears need ice platforms to hunt successfully. Less ice means longer swims between hunting grounds, depleting energy reserves. Females need stable ice to build dens where cubs are born. Climate change doesn't just warm temperatures, it restructures entire ecosystems, breaking food chains and eliminating habitats. Bears venture closer to human settlements searching for food, creating dangerous encounters that usually end badly for the bear. The Arctic Ocean itself transforms. New fish species migrate north as waters warm. Cod appear in areas where they previously couldn't survive. Commercial fishing fleets follow, bringing economic opportunity but also potential overfishing of stocks not yet fully understood. Marine biologists scramble to document ecosystem changes happening faster than research can track. Each summer brings new observations that contradict previous assumptions about what's possible in Arctic waters. Human history in Greenland spans thousands of years, but recorded history begins with Norse settlement around 985 CE. Eric the Red, exiled from Iceland, established colonies that survived for nearly 500 years before disappearing. Archaeological evidence shows the Norse struggled increasingly with cooling temperatures during the Little Ice Age. Farms that once raised cattle could no longer support livestock. Trade with Europe declined. The last written record from the Norse, the colonies dates to 1408. After that, silence. When Europeans next visited those sites, they found ruins but no people. The Thule Inuit, ancestors of modern Greenlanders, had meanwhile expanded across the island, their technology and knowledge better suited to Arctic conditions than Norse farming methods. Human responses to environmental change are written in Greenland's soil. Those who adapted survived. Those who clung to unsuitable methods disappeared. Museums in Nuuk preserve artifacts from both Norse and Thule cultures. Viking combs, iron tools, and fragments of woolen cloth rest in climate-controlled cases. Inuit kayak frames, harpoon points, and intricate carved figurines occupy adjacent displays. These objects tell parallel stories of human ingenuity in harsh conditions. The Norse brought European farming, Christianity, and metalworking. The Thule brought sophisticated marine hunting technology, dog sleds, and detailed knowledge of ice conditions. Neither culture was primitive. Both developed complex solutions to survival challenges. Only one approach proves sustainable long term in Greenland's environment. Modern Greenland stands at another crossroads. Climate change creates economic opportunities while threatening cultural foundations. Increased ship traffic through newly ice free waters brings goods, tourists, and outside influence. Mining companies eye rare earth deposits beneath the ice. These minerals are essential for smartphones, wind turbines, and electric vehicles. Greenland holds some of the world's largest undeveloped reserves. Extraction would generate enormous revenue for a small population. It would also scar landscapes and potentially contaminate ecosystems. Greenlanders debate whether short term wealth justifies long term environmental costs. These aren't abstract questions, they determine what Greenland becomes over the next century. Independence from Denmark remains a recurring political discussion. Greenland achieved self government in 2009, controlling most domestic affairs, while Denmark handles foreign policy and defense. Full independence would require economic self sufficiency. Currently, Denmark provides annual block grants covering roughly half of Greenland's budget. Developing alternative revenue sources means exploiting natural resources, expanding fisheries, or growing tourism. Each path brings complications. Resource extractions risks environmental damage. Overfishing threatens marine ecosystems. Tourism strains small communities unprepared for visitor influxes. There are no simple solutions when your population is 56,000 and your territory is 2 million square kilometers. Language preservation faces modern pressures. Greenlandic remains the primary language, taught in schools and used in government. But Danish and English dominate international business, higher education, and internet content. Young people often code switch, mixing languages in single conversations. Some worry that Greenlandic will gradually erode, becoming a ceremonial language rather than a living one. Others argue that languages evolve naturally, and attempting to freeze them in traditional forms is equally problematic. The debate reflects broader tensions between preserving culture and engaging with global society. Traditional knowledge holds unexpected value. Scientists studying climate change increasingly consult Inuit hunters who've observed Arctic conditions for decades. Hunters notice ice forming later and melting earlier. They report seals appearing in new locations and fish species never seen before. These observations provide data that satellite measurements miss. Indigenous knowledge and Western science, once viewed as incompatible, now complement each other. Hunters understand animal behavior patterns developed over generations. Scientists provide context for broader climate trends. Together, they build more complete pictures of ecosystem changes. Greenland's ice sheet contains information about Earth's past climate stretching back 128,000 years. Ice cores drilled from deep within the sheet trap ancient air bubbles. Scientists analyze these bubbles to determine historical carbon dioxide levels, temperatures, and atmospheric conditions. The ice preserves volcanic ash from eruptions thousands of years ago, creating chronological markers. This frozen library reveals that Earth's climate has fluctuated dramatically over millennia, but current warming occurs at unprecedented speed. The ice doesn't just record climate, it influences climate by reflecting sunlight back to space. As ice melts, darker land or ocean absorbs more heat, accelerating warming. This feedback loop concerns scientists because it creates self reinforcing change. Summer in Greenland means 24-hour daylight above the Arctic Circle. The sun circles the horizon, never fully setting. This permanent twilight disorients visitors, but locals hardly notice. They mount blackout curtains to sleep, but often stay active late. Into the bright night. Children play soccer at midnight. Fishermen work whenever tides and weather cooperate rather than by clock schedules. The constant light affects wildlife too. Birds remain active around the clock. Plants grow rapidly, cramming a full season into brief weeks between snowmelt and freeze up. Winter brings opposite conditions. The sun disappears for weeks or months depending on latitude. Darkness becomes total except for moon, stars, and occasional aurora borealis. Green, purple, and red curtains dance across the sky as solar wind particles collide with atmospheric gases. The Northern Lights hold spiritual significance in Inuit culture. Some traditional stories warn against whistling at the aurora, believing it might come down and carry you away. Others see the lights as spirits of ancestors playing games in the sky. Modern explanations of plasma physics and magnetic fields don't diminish the visual majesty of these celestial displays. Dog sledding remains practical. Transportation in some areas despite snowmobile availability. Machines break down in extreme cold. They require fuel, spare parts, and mechanical knowledge. Dogs eat fish and seal meat, resources already available. They navigate thin ice better than heavy machines. A dog team can sense dangerous conditions and refuse to proceed where a snowmobile would crash through. Mushers develop deep bonds with their dogs, knowing each animal's personality and capabilities. Lead dogs make independent decisions, choosing routes based on experience. The relationship between musher and team represents partnership rather than simple control. Fishing dominates Greenland's economy, particularly shrimp and halibut. Cold Arctic waters produce premium seafood prized in international markets. Fishing vessels work year round in ice free areas. Massive factory ships process catches at sea, freezing them for transport to Europe and Asia. The industry provides jobs across Greenland's coastal towns. It also creates vulnerability. If fish stocks collapse or international demand drops, much of Greenland's economy collapses with them. Diversification remains a constant challenge for such a small, isolated population. Greenland's geological history spans billions of years. Some of Earth's oldest rocks, nearly 4 billion years old, surface in the southwest. These ancient stones formed when Earth was still cooling from its molten beginning. They've witnessed the entire story of life on this planet, from single-celled organisms to dinosaurs to humans. Geologists study Greenlandic rocks to understand planetary formation processes. The island also contains significant deposits of zinc, lead, and gold. Ruby and sapphire deposits exist in the south. Mining these resources would bring jobs and revenue, but also roads, infrastructure, and permanent changes to landscapes that have remained largely untouched. Air travel connects Greenland's scattered communities. Small aircraft land on gravel strips, even in remote settlements. Larger planes use Kangerlussuaq's airport, built on the site of a former American military base. The long runway there accommodates international flights. From Kangerlussuaq, passengers transfer to smaller aircraft reaching other towns. Flying over Greenland reveals the island's scale. Endless white ice dominates the interior. Coastal areas show brown and green where ice retreats in summer. Fjords cut deep inland, their waters dark blue against pale rock. The view from above makes clear why road construction remains impractical. The terrain simply doesn't allow it. Greenland will continue changing. Whether that change follows paths Greenlanders choose or forces imposed by outside circumstances remains uncertain. The ice will keep melting regardless of human decisions. Sea levels will rise, new waters will open, resources will become accessible, other nations will take interest in Greenland's strategic position and untapped wealth. How Greenlanders navigate these pressures while maintaining cultural identity and environmental stewardship defines their future. There are no easy answers when the ground beneath your feet is literally melting. But if history proves anything, it's that humans adapt. The question isn't whether Greenland will survive, but what form that survival takes. The ice remembers everything. Perhaps it can teach us something about endurance. The ice sheet doesn't care about politics, economics, or human timelines. It responds only to temperature, following physical laws indifferent to borders drawn on maps. Each summer, meltwater streams across the surface, carving channels that didn't exist the previous year. Scientists measure the loss in gigatons, numbers so large they become abstract. But stand beside a glacier and watch house sized blocks of ice calve into the fjord, and the abstraction becomes visceral. This is happening now, not in some distant future requiring action from other generations. Greenland forces confrontation with uncomfortable truths. The comfortable life most humans enjoy comes with consequences paid by places and people far removed from the consumption. Rising temperatures here mean rising waters everywhere. The shepherd in Bangladesh, whose village floods, and the office worker in Miami, whose street goes underwater, share a connection to Greenlandic ice melt, whether they realize it or not. Geography no longer isolates. Everything connects through atmospheric currents, ocean circulation, and global systems that ignore the neat boundaries humans prefer. Yet focusing solely on climate catastrophe misses half the story. Greenland isn't just a victim of change, it's a laboratory for adaptation, a place where humans have survived impossible conditions for millennia by remaining flexible. The Thule Inuit didn't fight the Arctic. They learned to live within its constraints, developing technologies and knowledge systems sophisticated enough to sustain communities in darkness and cold that should have killed them. That wisdom persists in hunters who read ice conditions, in elders who remember when winters came earlier, in young people learning traditional skills while embracing satellite internet and social media. The tension between preservation and progress plays out daily in Greenlandic communities. Should mining projects proceed if they provide employment but risk environmental damage? Should traditional hunting continue when animal populations decline? Should young people learn Greenlandic when Danish and English offer more economic opportunity? These aren't hypothetical philosophy questions debated in comfortable classrooms. They're practical realities where wrong answers mean communities die, cultures fade, and ways of life disappear. Every choice carries weight because the margin for error is so thin. What makes Greenland exceptional isn't just its ice or its isolation, it's the clarity with which larger global patterns become visible here. Climate change, resource extraction, indigenous rights, geopolitical competition, cultural preservation in the face of globalization, all the defining challenges of our era converge on this island. Greenland doesn't have the luxury of treating these as separate issues. They're interconnected threads of a single tapestry, and pulling one affects all the others. Solutions require balancing competing interests with no guarantee of success. The Norse failed because they refused to adapt. They brought European farming to land unsuitable for it and maintained that system even as conditions deteriorated. The Inuit succeeded because they remained flexible, adjusting methods as circumstances demanded. Modern Greenland faces the same choice, though the stakes are higher and the change is more rapid. Will adaptation mean abandoning everything that makes Greenland distinct, becoming a resource extraction zone serving distant markets? Or can Greenlanders find ways to engage with the modern world while maintaining connection to traditions that sustained them for thousands of years? Nobody knows how this story ends. The ice will continue melting for decades, regardless of emission reduction efforts that might begin today. New shipping routes will open. Mining operations will extract minerals the world demands. Tourists will arrive seeking pristine wilderness even as their presence degrades what they came to see. Greenlanders will make choices about independence, resource development, and cultural preservation with imperfect information and uncertain outcomes. What seems clear is that Greenland's transformation will accelerate, not slow. The pace of change already exceeds what previous generations experienced over lifetimes. Standing on Greenland's ice sheet, you're standing on the past, present, and future simultaneously. The ice beneath formed from snow that fell before human civilization existed. The surface melts under temperatures caused by industrial activity from the past too, but each for centuries. The meltwater flowing around your boots will raise sea levels affecting humans not yet born. Time collapses here. Cause and effect become tangible in ways impossible to ignore. This isn't abstract science or distant concern. It's water you can touch, ice you can see disappearing, change you can witness within a single visit. Greenland matters because what happens here doesn't stay here. The island serves as an early warning system for the planet, showing what occurs when temperatures rise and ice melts. The lessons are uncomfortable. Change happens faster than models predict. Tipping points exist beyond which systems don't return to previous states. Adaptation has limits. Some ways of life cannot survive certain transformations, no matter how much people want them to. These truths apply everywhere, not just in the Arctic. Greenland simply sees them first. The island's future remains unwritten, shaped by decisions made in Nuuk, Copenhagen, Beijing, Washington, and countless other places where people who've never seen Greenland determine its fate through consumption patterns, investment choices, and political agreements. That outside influence creates frustration among Greenlanders who want control over their own destiny. But it also creates opportunity. The world needs what Greenland has: resources, strategic position, and knowledge about surviving in conditions that will become more common as climate shifts. How Greenland leverages that need while protecting what matters most to its people will determine whether the island story becomes one of exploitation or self determination. Perhaps the most important thing Greenland teaches is humility. Human plans mean little to ice sheets, ocean currents, and atmospheric systems operating on scales that dwarf our brief existence. We can adapt to changes we cannot prevent. We can make choices that minimize harm or accelerate damage, but we cannot control the fundamental forces reshaping this island. The ice of Piri will melt at its own pace, following physics rather than politics. What we can control is how we respond, whether with wisdom learned from those who've survived here for millennia, or with the same arrogance that doomed the Norse. Greenland remembers both outcomes. The question is which lesson we choose to learn.